So I do like getting started on time. So I want to make sure that everybody is in. We're feeling good. We got some water by you, especially for our panelists, because they will be talking a lot, having a lot of questions from you all. So we're excited to get you all started. So welcome everybody and good evening. And thank you for each and every one of you for being here with us today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Sanchez, and I'm a student success coach at McHenry County College. I will be here to help moderate this event along with Karina Castillo. And we're very pleased to see such a great turnout of attendees. With us today, we have an amazing panel of professionals in all spectrums of the criminal justice field. And our focus today with this event is just to enlighten you all with answers to your questions, whether that was maybe something you might have asked in your classroom, or maybe something that you're still kind of wondering about and specific to, but also not limited to work experiences, education, and background, and advancement in their profession, and also maybe hot topics in the field as well. Before we get started with our panel presentation, I will be passing over the virtual talking baton to Karina with some courtesy details while we're on Zoom. So Karina, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. As Melissa said, I am Karina. I am also a student success coach here at MCC. And just a quick reminder, if you all could turn on your cameras as you are listening in. I'm sure all the professionals here would love to see your beautiful faces and get to know you as we're moving along. I also will remind you all that there is a raise hand feature in the reactions. You should have that. For some reason, I don't have access to it and can't see it on my end, but feel free to raise your hand. I will be looking through, or feel free to just shoot a quick message to me on the chat. And then we can also ask those questions through there that you may be wondering or asking about. At the beginning, so Melissa, right now, and at the end, we'll also be sharing a PDF file for contact information with all of the people here today. And then I think that's it. So the workshop is being recorded. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want your face to be shown, then you don't have to necessarily show your camera, but ideally we would want you to. So thank you. Oh, sorry, one last thing. I also will be putting an extra credit link just in case any of you are trying to receive that extra credit for your classes.
All right, I am maneuvering through a couple screens here, so bear with me as I'm going back and forth. I will go ahead and get us started with let's see. So thank you, Karina, for those reminders. Let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. I know they're super eager to connect with you all. So I'm just going to quickly share a screen here so we can get a nice picture of their titles and who they are right now. Do you all happen to see this? I just want to double check. Okay, perfect. So welcome. So we got Sarah Barham. She's currently a police officer at Lake in the Hills Police Department. So if you want to wave hi, Sarah. We also have Bill Brogan. He is an instructor of criminal justice at McHenry County College. Welcome, Bill. We also got Mike Placeri. He is Chief of Corrections at the McHenry County Sheriff's Department. Hello, Mike. Thank you for coming. Renee Govea, Director of Upward Bound Program. Hello, Renee. Jason E. Kern, Executive Director at Southeast Emergency Communication, CECOM. Hello. Dr. Laura L.V. King, Chief of Police for the McHenry County Conservation District. Thank you for coming, Laura. Tom Kretschmer, Interim Chief of the McHenry County College Police Department. Thank you, Tom, for coming. Seth Krauss, Director of McHenry County Court Services and Probation. Hello. And Amanda Schmidt, Police Officer at Lake in the Hills PD. All right. So thank you for our panelists for being here with us today. Each panelist will answer the first question, but as Karina said, if there's any questions that maybe come along the way as you're hearing them speak, please feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hand and we'll be happy to get to you for your question. If we're noticing that it's a little quiet, we're just gonna be using some filler questions and maybe that might spark some other things. So please kind of know that this is an interactive dialogue and they would definitely, all of our panelists would wanna make sure that you are interacting as well because that's what they're here for. So right now we're gonna get us started and maybe, let me see who I have on my first screen here. Tom, if you want to get us started with telling us about your journey to the position that you're currently in right now. And that could include education or other professional experiences as well.
Okay, well, I started my education here at McHenry County College a long time ago. And then I went to Illinois State, got a bachelor's in criminal justice. I went to work for the Crystal Lake Police Department. I did that for 28 years. And then Chief Clisseri stole me away and I've been here at the college since. Currently, I'm the interim chief for another week and a half here, and then I'll be back to being sergeant when our new chief starts. So.
Thank you. If anybody wants to go next.
Hi. So I'll keep it real brief, I promise. So my journey started after high school, like everybody. Graduated in 2000. I joined the Marine Corps right after high school. I didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted to involve myself in. But you know, I'm an 80s baby. I'm an 80s baby to the T. I grew up on Sly, Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I knew I wanted some action. Joined the Marine Corps. I always had the idea that I would become a police officer. I don't know why, maybe a product of my environment, but so after serving 12 years active duty, I started, going towards my academic goals. Got my associates, got my bachelor's while I was active duty Marine. After the Marine Corps, that's where I applied for a position with the Juvenile Justice Department of Corrections, and so I was essentially a corrections officer for Illinois Youth Center in St. Charles. I spent about 2.5 years there until I was injured on the job. That forced me to reflect and start looking, start looking at some of the things that I want to continue doing and some of the things that I can no longer do. And so I started looking at higher education and looking at some of the elements that I was still in love with: professional development, working with young people and building them up. And that's why I'm here now, higher education as the Upward Bound director.
All right, I can go next. My name is Laura King. I'm currently serving as the Chief of Police for the Mchenry County Conservation District. How I got into law enforcement: my father was a police officer, and after receiving my associate's degree from my local community college, which wasn't out here, I got hired on the Mchenry Police Department. While I was there, I worked all the aspects. I worked patrol, I worked investigations. I was with an undercover narcotics unit with the state police for several years. Came back, got promoted to sergeant, and ended my career as division commander running the 911 center. I did dispatch for a short period of time before getting hired on the police department. So after 20 years there, I left to be the chief investigator for the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office for a while, where I was exposed to a whole different angle of the criminal justice system. And after a couple of years there, the opportunity to become chief at the Conservation District arose, and I have been here at the Conservation District for about 2.5 years now. I also adjunct over at MCC in the psychology department. I have a great forensic psychology course in case any of you guys want to take it.
All right, I'll jump in. I'm Mike Clisseri. I've got 33 years of law enforcement experience in both the Illinois and greater Los Angeles areas. I'm presently the Chief of Corrections in McHenry County Sheriff's Department and a former member of their SWAT team. I just recently stepped down from that because I've got a pretty big role here. And then Tom outed me I've been fortunate to work law enforcement in 3 different environments, the education community, municipal environment, and county law enforcement. I've been a canine officer. I worked street and major narcotics. I worked undercover cases. I've worked street gangs and gang homicides in Southern California. I manage the Asian Organized Crime Unit and intelligence units. I present regionally and nationally to law enforcement on a variety of topics, including active shooter, major narcotics investigations, tactical planning, and complex coordinated attacks. I have a bachelor's degree in business management and a JD in law. And if that wasn't enough punishment, I just recently went back to University of Virginia to get another graduate degree, and I'm currently enrolled in that.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Krauss. I'm the director of McHenry County Probation and Court Services. I've been with probation here in McHenry County for 20 years. Started out, well, let me backtrack. I did start at MCC. Thought I was going to be a physical therapy major. Went to Western Illinois after 1 year at MCC and quickly switched over to psychology. That's my undergrad is in psych. I started here right out of college as a home detention officer. So I had the kids with the ankle bracelets. Did that for about 5 or 6 years and then switched over to juvenile standard probation, partly for something different to do and partly so that I could go back to school at night. I did that and got a master's in human resources and management. Did about 5 years of standard juvenile probation, and then I moved over to pretrial on the adult side of the house, which is the folks that are newly arrested and in the jail and have to go in front of a judge for rights court to have their bond or conditions set for their release. Did that for a number of years, and then I moved into being a supervisor on the adult side, and then quickly moved on to chief managing officer of juvenile probation. And I've been the director for about 4 years now here in probation. That's my story, or at least the short version.
I'll jump in. My name is Jason Kern. I'm the director with Southeast Emergency Communications, or CECOM. We're one of the 3 regional dispatch centers in McHenry County that serves the entire county and beyond there. My journey, like many others, and as my family will tell you, I've not figured out what I want to do when I grow up. And I started in my senior year of high school, dabbling at a volunteer fire company and did some EMS in college at Villanova University. I moved into the dispatch role probably about 27, almost 28 years ago now. And also during that time, as many can attest, in the 90s, we often had 2 and 3 jobs. So I was a part-time police officer for about 10 years. And, you know, over the time, I've just risen through the ranks and enjoyed the challenges that we've had. And, you know, I always thought I wanted to be a police officer, and kind of fell in love and found a passion in this line of work. And I decided I would stick with it and apply myself that way.
We can go next. My name is Officer Sarah Barham. I'm currently with the Lake in the Hills Police Department. I've been a police officer for about 7.5 years. I started my career in law enforcement at Western Illinois University. I have a bachelor's degree in law enforcement and justice administration. Started my career with the Village of Cary, came over to Lake in the Hills, and I am now serving as our school resource officer.
I started my career in law enforcement in Ohio. I have a bachelor's degree, a bachelor's in science and criminal justice, and I went to the Ohio Academy, graduating in 2006, and took a lateral transfer from Ohio in 2012 to come out here to join all you fine folks in Illinois. So I have a total of 15 years of law enforcement experience. Started here in Lake in the Hills in 2014. And in that amount of time, I have been and still am a taser instructor, PPCT and defense instructor, tactical instructor, Had a great opportunity here in Lake in the Hills to start a lot of programs to get really involved in the community, which is one of the great things about our department is we are very, very involved out there. I'm also a public information officer and work with our social media.
And I guess that leaves it up to me. I'm so glad to see some of our students here that are attending tonight. And just like in our classes, they like to turn their camera off. I guess they're a little camera shy. So if you guys want to turn your cameras on, go ahead. My name is Bill Brogan. I'm in my 11th year here now at MCC. I like to tell my students I started here when the criminal justice program started back in 1977. A fellow by the name of Mel Wallace became kind of my mentor as a teacher and guided me through a lot of these questions that you're having right now about what you want to do with your career. I started out right out of high school thinking I wanted to be an architect, and I went to the University of Illinois and lasted 1 year. They told me at the beginning of my freshman year, look at the person on your right, look at the person on your left, because they won't be here in 4 years. Well, I was one of the people on the right or left. So I had to go to Plan 2, and I came back to McHenry County and started taking some classes at the local, community college. And I wound up in a couple of criminal justice classes. And in those days, there was a lot of money out there for police officers to go back to school. So I was actually meeting a lot of police officers that were already on the job, and they were coming back to further their education. And that's how I really got interested. My very first job in criminal justice, I got lucky and I got a job with the city of McHenry. And all I did was write parking tickets and do school crossings. Okay, I was not a sworn officer. Today, I guess they call that what? A community service officer. They got nice fancy names for it. I was a meter maid because back in those days we had parking meters. So I decided I wanted to be a police officer, and I got hired by a small village, Fox River Grove. I spent 4 years there. And then I started testing Crystal Lake, McHenry County, Harvard. I wound up getting hired back in McHenry. They were the first department to call me. And I spent the next 28 years there. And I worked, much like many of the other officers here, I worked many different roles on the police department, from patrol to youth officer to detective. I wound up getting promoted, and I was fortunate enough the last 2 years of my career there I spent as the chief of police. And that's when McHenry County College had an opening, and I applied, and I've been happily interacting with students here for the last 11 years. So I guess the message I want to get out to all the students here that are wondering if this is the right career for you, or if it is, which way do I want to go? Look at everybody that just introduced themselves. They all come from various backgrounds, and they all had the same questions you did. So you're not any different from where we were when we started our careers. I wouldn't do it, anything different. I would do the same thing. I've had a very good career. It's been very good to me, and I've met a lot of good people along the way. So with that, I'll give it back to Melissa.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to just get us kicked off with a couple of questions here. I still don't have anything in the chat, but during the registration portion of it, I did have a few students ask some questions. So was there something that any of you wish you knew before, entering a career in either criminology or criminal justice that maybe would have really helped you now? And anybody can just jump in.
Yes, I'll start, Melissa. The one thing that probably I wish I would have known, I had an idea, but I didn't realize, was back when I started, and then Bill and Mike and Jason probably remember this. We used to rotate backwards shift-wise. There weren't permanent shifts. So there was a lot of, you change shifts every month. Some departments did it every 28 days, from days to afternoons to midnights. One of the nice things that all of our students or pretendees should know is most departments that's gone by the wayside, and you bid for your shift by seniority. But once you get enough seniority, you could be on days or afternoons or midnights, whichever shift you like. So.
I'll take a stab at it, and I know Laura's going to jump on this because it's her area of expertise. But I think coming in, knowing how to better handle your mental health along with your physical health, I think knowing that coming in would have been a lot better than learning it later in life. So one of the things I tell new recruits, new officers coming in the door is you have to balance both, and you have to balance life. And I know Laura will expand on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. You know, what you bring up is an incredibly important point. So initially, my answer would have been, I wish I would have known how dangerous it could be for both my mental and physical health for me to constantly compromise and sacrifice my sleep to try to get the job done. You know, when you enter into police work, because of the rotating shifts, even if you're not personally rotating every month or 3 months or whatnot, somebody's always working midnight, somebody's always working afternoon, somebody's always working days, somebody's calling off sick, people are getting forced back for overtime, you got the late call, you have to stay there. And probably for the first 10 or maybe even 15 years of my career, sleep was secondary, and it was something I did when I had time because I was incredibly busy working and trying to maintain a social life and trying to get things done at my house and all of the different things that life throws at you. And what happens when you get incredibly fatigued like that is both your mental and your physical stuff can start to become compromised. All of you probably know that police work can be a very, very, very dangerous job. And it's important that you keep yourself in very good physical shape. In fact, when you're testing to get on a department, they're going to make you take the power test or some type of physical exam to make sure that your body is strong enough to do the job. Well, they're also going to test you and put you through a psychological exam to make sure your mind is strong enough to do the job. If you get yourself into an incredibly fatigued state, both your mental and your physical health can become compromised, and it's going to happen so subtly that you're not even going to notice that detrimental effects are occurring until you're in pretty deep. And so I hope the whole culture, the whole profession is starting to talk about these things now and educate their new recruits on the forefront. But back in my day, because I've been on the job 25 years also, nobody was talking about this, and we were all making really bad choices with very good intentions, and it was a dangerous place to be.
Thank you, Laura. Oh, go ahead, Seth.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add on, and you know, probation is obviously very different from police work. We're out there in the community, but we're not out making arrests necessarily. And so it is different. But one of the things that I think the field of probation at least has trended towards over the last 5-10 years is being more aware, I guess, of secondary or vicarious trauma. What our officers are expected to do is really connect with these clients that they're assigned to, find out what it is that drives their criminal behavior, their criminal thinking, and then work with them to try and teach them how to change that behavior for themselves over time. Rather than just strictly enforcement or consequence-based, leveraging people into compliance. That works while you have them under control, under paper, on a court order. But if we don't change how they think, then we don't change how they behave in the long term. And so it takes a big impact, though, on you as the probation officer. You're connecting with these people. You're getting to know them, their families, their background, their history. And sometimes people overdose and die. Sometimes they get killed by their spouse or significant other. And it takes a real toll on you and your mental state. And so being aware of that and like Laura was saying, knowing how to address it and how to talk about it safely and openly so that you don't just bury it down and it eats you apart. So that would be one thing that I think everybody going into all lines of work, not just probation, but certainly law enforcement, on the front lines as well. That's an important thing.
Thank you, Seth. We have one question here from Christina Swanson. She said, I teach sociology at MCC. Many of my students' area of focus is criminal justice. With today's social climate, how does the current job market look for those looking to have a career in criminal justice?
Well, I think it looks great because the faint of heart are backing away. So it's really only the people who truly love this profession and really want to get into a job where they can help the community and really take somebody's worst day and make it a little bit better by providing, emergency response services. The people that have a true passion for that are really the only one that are going to be coming to the forefront. So hopefully we'll get a lot more passionate professionals instead of people who before were maybe doing it for the money or the job security and didn't really have the passion to get them through this type of challenging career.
To build on what Laura said also, there's a lot of competition to get already trained officers because we can't get enough people applying for open positions, and that's just not, this is pretty much industry wide. So it's actually a great time to be getting into it because there's going to be a lot of job openings. People are going to get out of the profession because of the social climate. So it's going to give more opportunity for employment for people trying to get into the profession.
And I would add that we see a lot of folks that were or are law enforcement police officers that want to come to us. And that's a fairly recent thing. So it may be that they're looking to get out of, the frontline police work and come to something similar but different through probation. But we definitely have, it sounds like maybe a little different situation where we have no shortage of people applying for open positions. But there are a lot of requirements, and it takes a certain individual to really be successful as a probation officer in the same way that it does for police work as well.
Anybody else want to add in? Okay. And I hope that also answered a little bit. I know during the registration piece, there was a student that asked, what are the career projections for the criminal justice field? So as Tom had mentioned, now it seems like because of the climate, there's going to be a lot of availability for some of these positions. So I don't know if anybody else wanted to add on that specifically, but if not, I can move on to the next one.
Oh, sorry. Maybe we could just say this is not a bad time to get into police work. I know, the media's out there and there's a little bit of, or maybe even a lot in some places, of anti-police sentiment, but this isn't something that our profession hasn't seen before. And it's not something that we probably won't see again in another 20 or 30 years. It seems to be cyclical. It's almost like the housing market or the stock market. It gets to a point where everything's really good and popular, and then it kind of self-corrects. And it's unfortunate that this is happening right now. But if this is the profession you want, if this is the career path that you've always been dreaming of, don't let what's happening in society dissuade you. These jobs are here. These jobs are important. We're never going to have a society here in America that doesn't need the police. I mean, our society is just set up where we need that level of justice and helping professionals to kind of get people through. So don't let it dissuade you.
Did you want to add something, Mike? I know you unmuted, but I was just making sure.
No, I'm good right now. Thanks.
All right, I have a question from a student as well. What careers are currently available in the criminal justice field that's policing itself? I believe the wording was a little off. What careers are available in the criminal justice field itself? If anybody wants to expand on that.
I think you're looking at a lot of them right now. There's law enforcement and criminal justice is multifaceted, so you can get involved in your local police department, your local sheriff's departments, corrections, dispatch, conservation. I mean, there's the sky is the limit, and everybody plays a vital role in our profession. And each assignment that I've gone to in my career, I've learned something. When I started here in the Sheriff's Department in 2020, it was an eye-opener because I went from managing 10 people at MCC to managing 198 at the Sheriff's Department. So you can go to small agencies, you can go to large agencies. Probation is another thing. The court systems, it's just, and then it doesn't end there. You can teach, you can instruct, as Officer Barham was saying earlier, she's also an instructor in a lot of areas. So it's just, you get out of it what you put into it and what you want to get out of it. But there's so much to do in this profession.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a variety of probation type of jobs. You know, we in McHenry County, all of my officers handle adult and juvenile cases as a just a standard probation case, but we have people that are on pretrial release, and that's a specific job type. We have kids on home detention, which is kind of a specific job type. We have a pretty robust problem-solving court. So there's drug court, there's mental health court, there's DUI court. Those are all specific officers with specific duties. There's also the clinicians. So that's like a master level social worker, clinical social worker, who works with those same clients from more of the clinical therapy end of things. But that's a court-based position. Gosh, and a variety beyond that. And Chief Claseri, you know, is with corrections, but there's also, not in McHenry County, but we use Kane County Juvenile Detention Center. And so there's juvenile detention within the court system as well. So yeah, there's no shortage of different and a variety of options for people.
And along those lines, I wanted to just add, is there, because a student had asked in the registration question, do some of these positions in the criminal justice field all require maybe some sort of degree? Or are there positions where you don't have to necessarily be in college? And what are the pros and cons with that as well?
So I have a strong opinion on this. And when I was an officer working under Chief Brogan, I remember he once said to me, we're discussing, you know, educational requirements for the agency. And I thought life experience was a lot more important than education. And it was primarily because we had a couple people working for us who were straight out of college, never had a job in their life, and they didn't even know how to show up for work on time, you know, because they'd never had a job before. And I was like, this isn't working. We're getting all these educated people who don't know how to tie their own shoes, you know? And he's like, you're so funny, Laura, because you have one of the highest level of educations on the entire department, and you're the one that's advocating against education. And it's not that I'm anti-education, okay? But life experience counts for a lot too. Most police departments have an educational requirement. Everybody's a little bit different. A chief like me is probably going to lower the educational requirement if I have the ability to right now. We will take officers that have no college, you know, but some agencies do require a degree. What I will say to that is they don't always require a degree in criminal justice. So when you're in college, take some criminal justice classes to make sure you like it, to make sure it's interesting to you, to make sure you don't absolutely hate it. But if there's another field of study that you find fascinating and that you're really good at, don't be afraid to study that too, because we have people with finance degrees, we have people with environmental science degrees, we have people with mechanical degrees, we have people with no degrees. So it's like kind of like a sports team. You don't want every single player to have the same skill set. So the more diverse our officers, the stronger our unit. So education is really a tool that you have in your belt, but don't feel pigeonholed to get your full education in criminal justice. Criminal justice classes are incredibly important, but you can get your degree in anything and still be a police officer.
I would really like to piggyback off of that. Having been in law enforcement for 7.5 years, I got my bachelor's in law enforcement and justice administration. I'm actually going back for my master's in social work because as you get into the job, you recognize that there are other areas that it would be very beneficial to have additional education in.
Yeah, and what I always tell people that when they ask me, well, what should I get my degree in? Well, I got mine in business management. And because as you promote up through the ranks, and it depends what your goals are too, as you promote through the ranks, you're really running a business the higher you go. And so I look at it from that perspective. And then when I went to law school, that taught me how to be a better critical thinker and writer, which also helps you really in any aspect of this job. Criminal justice courses are great. I agree with Laura. Take a few so you understand what the job's about, but don't pigeonhole yourself. My son is a bio pre-med student, and when he was trying to get into the various colleges, they actually told him and other medical students, get your prereqs out of the way for med school, but you don't necessarily have to be a bio major to get into med school. You have to have your biology requirements, but diversify. Some people go into a completely different area, get their education, and then enter medical school. So it's good to have diversification.
To build on what everybody said, as I said earlier, part of my career was with Crystal Lake, but when I retired as commander of operations, and one of the things we did while I was in that position was look at officer requirements. And we, for a long time, required a bachelor's degree or military experience. And I was actually the proponent, and I also have a master's degree. It's kind of like Laura, I was highly educated, but let's back that off to 60 credit hours. We didn't even say associate's degree, we just said 60 credit hours. Because they have to do something between 18 graduating high school and 21 when you're eligible to become a police officer. But that can be work and school combination. Get some life experience that will help you on the job immensely.
I think something else to recognize is, with the last year we've had of the pandemic and so many of us not being able to communicate and be around individuals, but also with some generational gaps and the technology that's there. I think the lost art of dealing with people and communicating with people has gone by the wayside. And no matter who you look at on this panel here, from corrections to probation to the police to the dispatch, the 911 center, you have to be able to communicate effectively with individuals, not only to successfully resolve something, but for your livelihood. And I think that's how you go far in your career. So that's something that I'm not sure how you teach that or how you learn that, but you definitely need to be able to interact with each other.
And for probation, it does require a bachelor's degree. That's a state requirement. It can be in darn near anything that you want to study, but you do have to have a bachelor's degree in order to apply and be eligible through the state. And that's at least in part because each county or jurisdiction receives reimbursement from the state. I'm technically a state employee. So there's a oversight body at the state level that makes sure that you are at least have a bachelor's.
Right. And let's not forget that there's a lot of other aspects of policing outside of the sworn law enforcement, which most of us have been speaking to, but like the telecommunicators, the records clerks, the community service officers, and all of those have different, and some of those have no educational requirements.
And while I'm on it, I would just add, my wife is a forensic interviewer at the Mchenry County Child Advocacy Center. She got her degree in fine arts, like metals and jewelry, I believe, but she now has a master's in social work. And, that is another line of work that you could get into with a bachelor's degree. And that is an extraordinarily tough job. I think any of the officers could probably speak to how difficult it is to deal with cases that involve severe physical or sexual abuse of minors. And so that is yet another line of work that is within the purview of this discussion.
leads into the next question is what other requirements are needed to become a police officer?
First off, you have to be able to pass the power test. If you want to know what's involved in that, for the sake of time, Google Illinois power test. That's the minimum physical requirement to be a police officer in the state of Illinois. Each department will have different requirements. So where Crystal Lake might require 60 credit hours, Laura said the conservation agency right now is requiring a high school diploma. As you know, depending on where you go will depend on the requirements. There's not a statewide minimum education requirement for police agencies because each municipality is different. Okay, the state police actually just backed off of their bachelor's degree requirement to try to diversify their workforce a little bit more and get more people applying. So it just depends on where you're applying from a police perspective on what the requirements may be.
I'll add to that. So then there's a interview process. So that's usually, you know, a panel of 2 or 3 that will interview individuals who pass the power test. And then you would meet with a background investigator. You would fill out a packet, used to be about that thick, still probably is. And you put everything in there that they ask for. It's basically your life history on paper. And background investigator will go over that information with you and then match it to a polygraph later. Not asking you every question, but certainly hitting the highlights to weed out some of the bad apples. You have to pass a psychological evaluation, which is done usually by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, depending on the firm, the outside firm that's being utilized. And if you're fortunate to get through all those steps, sometimes you'll have a chief's interview or a sheriff's interview, and then you're selected. But once you're selected, it doesn't end there. So to the education requirement, even though there's not a formal education requirement. Oh, and then let me back up. There's also a medical, you have to pass a medical exam, drug tests, 10-panel drug test, and all that stuff. Then once you get out into the field, then you're put into a training program, and depending on which model your agency utilizes, that could be anywhere from 3 to 4 months, where you spend a specific amount of time with different training officers. So you learn the best from those training officers, and you try to mold into your own person. You have to pass that complete training program before you're eligible to work on your own. And once you are eligible to work on your own 3 or 4 months into it, now you've got a year to a year and a half probation, in some cases 2-year probation, depending on the agency. And you have to pass every facet of that training. And then you are a full-fledged police officer. So although there's not a statewide mandate for formal education, much like a mechanic goes to trade school, or you know, a welder goes to trade school, law enforcement is a trade. And all that training, starting with the academy, then spilling into the field training officer program, and then that 1.5 to 2-year probation is all part of that educational process. So it makes me laugh when I hear people criticize law enforcement officers for not having formal education. I would submit that they do have formal education, just in a different realm.
I'm going to add something on that same note. Mike talked about interviews. When you show up for an interview, show up dressed appropriately, jacket, tie, clean shaven. If you're female, nice business attire. It's a job interview, that interview when you sit down with somebody. I've had guys show up in ratty t-shirts and ripped jeans. that person didn't get considered because they didn't present themselves appropriately. They may have been able to be a perfectly good police officer, but you have to put up a good front initially and impress the people that are sitting down and talking to you.
And understanding that not everybody can afford a really nice suit or something like that, right? But there are agencies where you can go to, or, you know, I think MCC has a job fair every year, and they offer clothing for people who aren't able to buy that suit to walk in looking spiffy. And we actually look beyond that, but to Tom's point, yeah, hygiene is important. So you can have, you know, an outfit on that's business-like, but not necessarily a suit, although a suit is usually the best. But as long as you're clean, you have that good appearance and you know, a good manner about you, you know, we're able to look beyond some of that.
Thank you, Mike, for bringing that up. Oh, go ahead, Laura. You want to?
Yeah, just one last thing on this topic. So, you know, Chief Cliseri brought up some very good points. It's not an easy process, okay? But it also shouldn't be a scary process. And a lot of times people hear things like psychological interview, polygraph test. They've seen too many movies, they get all freaked out, okay? The psychological test is screening you for psychopathology. If you are a psychopath, you probably know it way before you're taking a police test, okay? This normal people, well-adjusted people, your average, regular, everyday people are gonna pass. It's not gonna be a problem. Same thing with polygraph. That's a lie detector test. Don't lie. It's not a perfect person test, okay? Go and take the test and just be honest. If you admit to doing something that they have a question about or that they think was suspicious or bad behavior, they're going to ask you on that. The reason people fail polygraphs is because they lie, not because they tell the truth and admit something unfortunate that or silly or stupid that they did when they were younger. Just so people know that.
Thank you, Laura. And I know Karen also was kind enough to put it on the chat, but to what Mike was speaking about earlier, we do have the Purple Closet. So especially if you're a student at MCC, the Purple Closet does offer like tickets basically for you to go and grab clothes from Goodwill and a couple different agencies that are in McHenry County. And you can get your, you know, your business suit and things like that. So you're showing up professional to the interview. And Ashley, I did not forget about you. I know we have a couple questions from you as well. So she had asked, can someone who has anxiety succeed in working as a 911 dispatch?
So as a person with anxiety who dispatched for many, many years, yes. It's just like stress, okay? It's all about how you manage the anxiety. So it's okay to be human. Again, this isn't a profession that demands perfection from their people, but you've got to manage that. But more importantly than managing that and making sure it's not manifesting in unhealthy ways while you're on the radio, because you need to be able to stay calm and keep your composure. And Jason probably can speak about this at an even more significant level. But you also have to make good decisions for yourself, and you have to self-monitor. And if something that's happening at work, even if you're able to perform professionally, if your anxiety is elevated when you're off duty because of the things that you were exposed to, or because of whatever is happening in your professional environment, just because you can do it maybe doesn't mean you should do it. But the short answer to that is yes, anxiety would not prohibit you from being a telecommunicator, a police officer, or a chief of police.
Yeah, I would just concur with that. And being in the dispatch field for a number of years, I've worked alongside and worked with some individuals that have had different levels of anxiety. And I think, as Laura stated, as long as you are aware of it and are able to manage it and honest with yourself about it, I don't think you're going to have an issue with it.
Another question was, oh, did you? Okay.
Just a quick note, we all have some type of anxiety, so we all have to learn to manage it. First time I got shot at, I got anxious, okay? Was not pleasant, but I had to focus on the task at hand at the time. So you just learn how to deal with the anxiety as it comes and manage it and get through the situation. So you can be very successful and have anxiety in this profession.
Yeah, this job can actually give you anxiety.
All right. Other question that I got was, what is the most prominent career students choose in the criminal justice field besides police officer?
I think they're all pretty prominent. I think it's what you want to do and how you want to help the community. So I think everything's prominent. I don't think a police officer is any better than a firefighter, than a correction officer, than a community service officer. We all have a role, and without everybody in their roles, I don't think we can be successful in the manner in supporting the county and beyond.
I don't have any statistics, but I would say, we employ about 30 officers here in McHenry County. And the counties around us, the collars, DuPage, Kane, Lake, they're all larger than that. So there's lots of jobs and opportunities out there within the probation field.
Anybody else want to add?
I think Laura kind of alluded to it earlier. You have records people, community service officers. There's court clerks. There's court security people. There's a lot of different job opportunities within the field of criminal justice itself.
Yeah, I would say prominence is whatever your passion is. And if you find your passion in any portion of the criminal justice field, whether it be forensics or dispatch or, law enforcement, it's all good. It's about how you make it prominent.
Okay, I got another question here. If there is no state mandate for job requirements, is there a universal platform for training police officers? They believe that the DOJ has been working on that since 1968, the Democratic National Convention.
I think I understand the question. The answer is on a national scale. There is no national training for police officers to become one. It's done. The state gives us requirements. Those requirements are met within the state police or the police academies we send our officers to. So at the state level, we all go to at least a 440 hour, I think it is now, police academy. There's continuing training. There's mandated continuing training. So there are things that we all have to have and training we have to have, but there is no national police requirement, because policing here in Illinois, and Mike can speak to this, is probably very, very different than policing in LA or California, and very, very different from policing in New York City. So you have to have policing that's tailored to the area you live in and the communities that we service.
Yeah, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that there's no standards, because there's definitely standards. And like Tom says, they're different in different states. And I'm going to date myself. When I went through the police academy in 1986, I had 686 hours of academy training at basic level. And when I got out to Illinois, at that time it was only 450. But if you look at the different environments, you understand. Now I know California law enforcement training is up to 986 hours of training And that's just academy training alone. That doesn't take into account all the post requirements after you get out of the academy, go through your training, and then your continued training. And one of the things about this police reform bill, as we all delve into it, is, and I've been heavily involved in this with the sheriff's department, is we're doing a lot of things right. And a lot of the things that are in those reforms, and I could speak to the sheriff's department and to MCC both, we hold ourselves to a high standard. Some of it is just consolidating some of that stuff that we're already doing into different silos of training, but we are doing, if not all of those, an awful lot of those. So what we're doing is right. We just need to continue to get better.
Yeah, and if I can just piggyback on what everybody said so far, I think that Chief Cliseri said it the best before. Our standard educational requirements is our police academy here in Illinois, and that is kind of like a trade school, for lack of a better term. When the question was, so there's no standard educational requirement, we were speaking in the context of associate's degree, bachelor's degree, certain core classes at colleges. There's no standardized that requirement. It varies by agency to agency, but then we do take you in the police academy and we put you through specialized training. And then the specialized training continues when you're on the job. So again, it's not without educational standards. It was just not a college degree that was a concise and standardized across the board requirement.
Thank you. I do have a question for specifically probation officer. I think there was just clarification. Do you need a bachelor's degree in criminal justice? And would it be sufficient enough, or do you recommend maybe like something higher?
Sorry about that, muted. In Illinois, you need a bachelor's degree. It does not need to be in criminal justice. Mine is in psychology. I've got POs here who have bachelors in sociology. I've hired master's level people who have a master's in social work, and everything in between. So it is required that you have a bachelor's. It does not have to be criminal justice specific. It doesn't hurt though. And as I think was alluded to earlier, having some idea of what, as you go through college, if that's the route you choose, having some idea of what criminal justice is involved in, or what's involved in it and what it's going to require of you would be good to kind of narrow down your options. But in probation, bachelor's degree, and Illinois is required. Not all states are the same.
Thank you. Another question from a student is, are there any job shadowing opportunities or internships in any of the professions that you currently have?
The normal answer to that would probably be yes. Not necessarily here at the college because we're so small, but I know Crystal Lake has an internship program, the Sheriff's Department, Algonquin, I believe Lake in the Hills, you guys doing it? Yeah, so I mean, almost every department or bigger departments in the county does internship programs. Now with COVID, several of the agencies have had to back off because of the exposure. But once we get through this, in fact, internships are a great way to get exposure to learn, is this really what I want to do, before you're committed to a career in it? Because once you're in, you get 5 years in or so, it's very difficult to leave the profession at that point. So, but yeah, most police agencies, I can't speak to court services or CCOM, but have internship programs available.
I got a question for Jason and Seth. Do you guys do internships, either in communications or in probation?
Jason?
Communications, we do not do an internship. We do sit-alongs, if you will, very similar to a ride-along, where at one point you were able to ride with a police officer, but pre-COVID and hopefully to start up again soon, we would allow somebody like a criminal justice student or somebody that was interested in the career to come sit with a shift or two and see what's for them.
And in probation, yeah, we do internships. It's usually somebody that, you know, a semester's worth as they're working towards their bachelor's. We've had a few job shadow, just a day, you know, to follow an officer, a couple officers around. But yeah, we do both. Slightly limited by COVID, but we could work it out.
I get that question from time to time about doing an internship with the probation department. That's good to know. Okay.
Hit me up anytime.
Okay.
I know that I can speak to our internship program. We've been doing it for many, many years. We have a very successful internship program. And to make it short and easy for everybody, I would suggest going to lith.org/police. Go to our recruitment page. It will walk you through it. We have a link there. Contact us through there if you are interested in our internship program. We can kind of work around what your individual requirements are for your program.
Another thing on internship programs, apply early. Bill will probably shake his head to this, but internships fill up fast, especially over the summer months and usually fall or spring semesters. When I ran the internship program in Crystal Lake, I could get anywhere between 12 and 13 internship applicants for a semester, and I had to limit it to 2 because that's what we could handle. So get that application in early if you're thinking of doing an internship.
Yeah, we just interviewed 7 prospective interns for 5 positions of the sheriff's department. And then we had MCC actually call us and say, look, we have somebody here who needs an internship. So we made room for her on the corrections side alone instead of the overall internship program. But to Tom's point, yeah, apply early.
With the Department of Juvenile Justice, at least when I was there, mind you, I did leave in 2017. There was opportunities for groups to go do site visits at the respective facilities. You know, just a matter of reaching out to whichever facility it was that you had an interest in. But you know, for anyone that does have an interest in working with youth as a juvenile justice specialist, I would highly recommend, you know, go take a look at the facilities and you know, check it out for yourself before you do, you know, move on and you know, make a more serious decision because it is a lot. It is a lot to get into, you know, working with youth and providing security at the same time.
Yeah, and I would piggyback, I guess, on what Renee said. You know, DOJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, they have a new initiative that they're implementing right now to try and have kids stay in juvenile DOC basically for less time and get them back out into the communities where they're going to return to anyway, and kind of, you know, get them stabilized in the community where they live. So they're going to be expanding a lot of locations and the need for, I'm sure, staff to properly secure those locations and provide the treatment to juveniles is going to expand.
And I think I wanted to kind of ask, because I think many of you had mentioned that, you know, at some point within your career, whether that's kind of at the administrative level or you're directly working with the community, I mean, how do you serve your community? What are some of the things that you do to engage with them that, you know, is also a part of maybe, I don't know if it's a part of your job requirement or something that maybe you enjoy to do just on the side as well?
One of the things that, and I think most agencies do this now, is Citizens Police Academy. And I know the college actually does one as well as I think it's, Bill, you're gonna have to help me here. I think it's a credit course. So, but that helps people who are interested in what we do learn about the profession, and we can kind of expose them to what the police department does. There's a lot of community relations stuff. I think Lake in the Hills actually does a big bike rodeo. They have a setup for that, and it's kind of nice. Crystal Lake, they do big national night out event down at the Three Oaks Recreational Center. So there's lots of opportunity to become involved, but it could be as simple as doing a foot patrol in your downtown area and just talking to businesses and seeing, what they feel they need from you as a police agency, and providing that service to them.
Yeah, Tom, you're referring to our student police academy. And this goes back to the idea of the internships. We just don't have enough departments with enough positions for interns every semester. My first semester here at MCC, I had 30 students wanting an internship in one semester. We don't have 30 police departments in McHenry County. So my partner, Harriet Johnson, put together what we refer to as a student police academy, and it's modeled after the police academies that departments put on. And this course here, it is 3 credit hours, so you get credit, but it's the course that makes or breaks most students. When they take that course for 16 weeks and they're interacting with police officers and they're doing building entries and they're doing traffic stops and they're doing domestics and all kinds of stuff, putting them through their paces, that's when they make up their mind. Yeah, this is where I want to keep going. I really love this. Or no, this really isn't for me. I think I want to look at something different. So yeah, that's very important. So for you students that are here with us, if you haven't already signed up for that course, and we haven't had it during COVID, obviously, but I believe Harriet's going to offer it in the fall. So get signed up for that class.
Anybody else want to add?
Were you also talking about external organizations and things?
Yeah, feel free to go ahead and add to that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been involved in for many years now, and actually since it started, is the Patriot Run, which is for veterans. It's a 5K. It's MCC is one of the hosts, and so I serve on that committee. I've served on regional board for Support Our School Foundation in Southern California. It was actually something I started when they laid off some teachers to get theater arts and music back into the classroom to fund the salary of 3 people that were laid off. Special Olympics, I think many of us in the room are involved in those types of things, events. On the SWAT team, we did an annual plane pool where we would raise funds for Special Olympics, and 20 of us, he-men would go out there and actually pull a big jet, if you can imagine that. Just being active in your community, getting out there. And when I was at the college, every year I would do Martin Luther King Day of Service. I was involved in Hispanic Heritage Week, the planning team for that, Asian American Week. Just the more people we can touch and engage, the better we are with bridging the gaps in multiple communities. And I think that's really, really important. A lot of us are involved in those types of things. We don't often talk about them, but that's a story that needs to be told.
Thank you, Mike. I think we have time for just one more question here. And I know this was a student question as well for one of the students that had signed up. What do you find most rewarding about your profession currently?
This is going to sound goofy, but we make a difference in our communities and in individuals' lives every day we go to work. And it might be something simple that you don't even realize. For example, I was the SRO at school resource officer at Central High School for 8 years of my career in Crystal Lake. And I tutored a kid in American history so he could graduate. Never thought much about it, just did it at the end of the day. It wasn't a big deal. But to him, it was a huge deal. I run into him around town every once in a while, and he still reminds me how I got him through high school. And he went in the military. He's been very successful as an adult. It's little things we do that make a difference, that we as officers, dispatchers, correction people, we don't always think it's a big deal, but to that person, it's a huge deal. And those are the things that, you know, they remind you, you did this for them, and it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I made a difference that day. And that's what makes it worth doing. That's what makes you come back the next day.
I think to piggyback on that, when folks call the first responders, when they call 911 to get a police officer or a firefighter or any of the criminal justice continuum, they're having one of the worst days in their life usually. And to be able to have a positive impact, you know, a lot of us don't do this for that continual affirmation, but that is definitely something to think of. And I think to what you know, Laura had said earlier, it helps your mental health to realize that you are making an impact. But something we started here at CCOM back in 2016 is we started a wall of life. And at any point, if we either deliver a child over the phone prior to the first responders getting there, or if we provide CPR instructions or other life-saving instructions to somebody that's you know, that is deceased currently when they're calling us, our telecommunicators go up on the wall of life. Since we started this in 2016, and what, not only do we help bring them back, but they actually physically walk out of the hospital. So there is some enhanced criteria to that. But since we started this in 2016, we have 26 individuals that were deceased when somebody called 911 and walked out of the hospital. And of those 26, one of those is a baby girl that was born last year. So when you think about that, just in the short 5 years, we've dispatched many of these police officers that you may see here, along with firefighters, to help with that assist. We don't always do it all on our own. It's a team effort. But there's 26 people walking around our community now that in the last 5 years maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity. So
That's amazing, Jason. Yeah, I think all of us are in this to help people, right? If we didn't want to make a difference, if we didn't want to make people's lives better, if we didn't want to make our communities' lives better, we wouldn't be doing this. And so in addition, when I spent time working at the state's attorney's office, we were very involved with criminal justice reform to try to bring best practices and fairness in sentencing to McHenry County. And that, again, was incredibly important and rewarding work. Now that I'm at the conservation district, I not only get to go out there and help people and help protect property, which I was used to doing, you know, with the city of McHenry for 20 years, but we also have the conservation code. We also have the fish and wildlife code. So now I'm not only helping the people, but I'm helping protect the plants and the animals and the very delicate ecosystems that exist. I have learned so much about nature and the benefits of nature and what the conservation district is doing in its restorative efforts in the past 2.5 years that I myself am amazed, because I walked into it thinking I was a person that really paid a lot of attention to environmental issues and really knew a lot. But you know, you have to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And no matter what area of criminal justice work you get into, you are going to be rewarded with that feeling.
You know, working with the Department of Juvenile Justice as a juvenile justice specialist, you know, essentially our job is to provide safety and security and to move the youth from point A to point B in a timely and safely fashion. But, you know, in there, you had pockets of time where you could have conversations with these individuals. And, you know, they would expect you to treat them based on their actions or their rap sheets or whatever. And it was just, you know, one of the most rewarding things was when you got to see those aha moments, right? When you're actually talking to them with respect, talking about tomorrow, right? Past tomorrow and their goals and the future. And, you know, unfortunately, some of them, you know, you would catch them in the news or they would come back. But then there was those that would go on to get their GEDs, start college classes, raise their families, and do great things with their lives. So in essence, it's almost like a learning opportunity for us where we're learning that, you know what, they're not bad people. They're people that made bad decisions, and we can all change. And so that to me was the most rewarding thing that I got out of, you know, as a juvenile justice specialist.
Yeah, and I think that's true of working with adults as well. You know, that moment, that light bulb moment where they start to think differently and behave differently and their whole life changes, it's because of what they did. You're just helping them. But that is a pretty satisfying moment in the workday.
Yeah, I think not everybody has a solid upbringing, and where we can make a difference in somebody's life, that's what brings the most joy to me. And in 33 years of doing this job in various capacities, I've been able to impact a lot of lives, and that is what keeps me going. I could have walked away from this a year ago, but I love my job and I love law enforcement. And I'm going to keep giving till I can't give anymore. And then I'll say goodbye. I'll leave it to all the younger officers.
Sarah, Amanda, did you want to share anything else as we're closing up?
Just kind of along with what everyone else was saying, this can be such a rewarding line of work. Like I said earlier, right now I'm serving as a school resource officer, and the capacity to do good and to get involved with my community and to be able to influence our most vulnerable population has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my career so far.
When I started law enforcement, I didn't have any grandiose ideas that I could change the world, but I knew that if I could make a difference every day in at least one person's life and make that positive difference, that I would hope that that person could go out and pay that forward, and that my actions and how I treated them would, and hopefully could, inspire them to make a difference and go out and, you know, change something that they would do in that day. And if we could all do that, as people, as police officers, as dispatchers in corrections everywhere, if we could always have that positive influence and positive attitudes, and every day find somebody and make that difference, we could, in fact, make that positive world change. And it might not be one person, but it's all of us doing that together. And that's the kind of the idea of why I got involved in this and what my plans were. And if we could do that together, we could actually make that world change.
Am I missing anybody else who wants to add their final thoughts as we're wrapping up?
I'd just like to say one more thing to those people on the panel that are still on the job out there every day on the front line. So Amanda, Sarah, Mike, Tom, Laura, Seth from Probation, Jason, thank you for what you're doing. I tell my students every day, we got to keep this thing moving, because not a lot of people right now want to get into this field. And I hate to think what the country will be like if we didn't have police officers, if we didn't have dispatchers, if we didn't have firefighters and paramedics and probation officers out there on the front line making that difference, like Sarah said. That's what we need. And hopefully when students come to us right out of high school, when they're 17 or 18 years old, and they spend a couple of years with us at MCC, they'll find out if they want to go into this field or not. I didn't think this when I started teaching full time, but I'm realizing we're the first filter at the college. And it's things like this event that are helping some of these students to make a decision on what they want to do and which direction they want to go in if they want to stay in criminal justice. And thank you guys for still fighting that good fight out there every day, doing what you're doing. I think about you guys all the time and wish I was back there with you sometimes, but I have another job to do now. And I just want to say, stay safe and keep doing what you're doing. We're thinking about you. You're our heroes.
All right, last call for anybody else that wants to add anything. Okay, so, oh, Tom, did you want to say something?
Just thank you for putting this all together. So.
Yes, and I wanted to thank you all for being here with us tonight, and our panelists for taking the time out of this evening to be here with us. and really just share your experiences and your knowledge with the students. As I mentioned before, this is a recorded workshop. So if there's any students that you might know about that might have missed this, please feel free to let them know that they can email me. I put my email in the chat. So then that way I can send the recording once that's available. But can we give one more round of applause to our panelists here? I know we're going to do it virtually. So thank you so much for being here with us. And like I said, don't forget to also complete the attendance form if you're here. This is typically, I know that some instructors are offering extra credit, or if you're in a certain program that you're receiving some additional credit for, please make sure that you're filling out the attendance form. And I also sent in the PDF file that has all of our panelists' bios and contact information. So if you wanted to ask them any other questions or reach out to them, feel free to do that through the PDF file that I just attached in the chat. So I think that's it. So thank you so much and have a good night, everybody. Goodbye.